Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Let me just get my equipment arranged here. Okay, I'm going to talk to you this morning about some of the opportunities that Canadian technology companies have, as well as some of the challenges that we face. I'm going to take you through my discussion by first telling you a little bit about Teledyne DALSA for those of you who are not aware of what we do or how we've grown in the Canadian technology landscape of companies. I'm going to then tackle some of the questions that are facing us regarding our opportunities to grow, how we take advantage of those opportunities that lay in front of us, and how we avoid the threats that we may face. And as we go along, who we need to call upon to help us get over the hurdles that may be in front of us. So first of all, to help introduce Teledyne DALSA and what we do, a few questions on the screen there for you to see if there's any familiarity in some of the technologies that are listed there, and I suspect that you've all experienced many, if not all of those events on the screen, and believe it or not, all of those incorporate our technology from the various parts of our company around the world. We are generally a components provider, and as such, we're usually a couple of levels removed from the consumer, so you may not be aware of the technology that you're making use of and how it relates to Teledyne DALSA. So let me give you a little bit more information. Generally, our company, if I was to put it in a nutshell, provides digital imaging solutions and advanced semiconductor solutions for generally high-performance applications. We do have full operations in many locations in the world. Our largest operations are in Canada, but we do have full R&D, manufacturing, sales, and distribution in the Netherlands as well as in the US. So we do have a viewpoint of operating the important parts of a company in many different jurisdictions, and as a result of that, I'm able to kind of compare and contrast the benefits of running a company in Canada versus other locations. We do sell worldwide. That operational split that I described comprises about 1,000 employees in all of our locations. In 2011, we were acquired by Teledyne Technologies, Inc. Prior to that, we were a publicly traded Canadian tech company, DALSA Corporation. Our sales growth curve is shown at the bottom right there, and we expect to continue to grow this year, and have just had a plan approved by our parent to continue that growth in the coming years, along with the accompanying investment that we need to make. Here's a picture of where we sell our products and where we operate around the world. The numbers in the boxes are approximate employee counts, and you can see that we're certainly a heavy exporter. Very few of our customers operate in Canada, although we do have a few. Our head office is in Waterloo, Ontario, and I'm not going to talk about BlackBerry today. We have the biggest operation in Bromont, Quebec, where our semiconductor fab is located, and also full operations in Montreal. We sell most of our products in Asia Pacific. You can see 43% of our sales are in that region, in terms of kind of the biggest geographical area for our sales, followed by North America and then Europe and Middle East. In the Asia Pacific region, we sell a significant portion of our products into semiconductor, mask and wafer inspection, and flat panel display inspection for everything from the latest OLED screens for smartphones up to large television screen panels. We're also a very heavy investor in R&D, and later on I'll talk about how that impacts our role in Canada versus our opportunities to run parts of our business in other parts of the world. This chart is from Research Money's review of R&D spenders that they do annually, and chose 2011's results, where we ended up around the mid-40s in terms of all companies in Canada. We spend about 20% of our sales on R&D, which is a pretty significant proportion of sales. In fact, when Teledyne acquired us, we did have a bit of a educational task to describe our business model and work to convince Teledyne that a 20% spend of revenue was the right amount for R&D in order to continue to fuel our growth as a high-performance technology company. That education process wasn't entirely successful, but for the most part it was. We are faced with some headwinds, especially considering the changes in the SHRED program, in an effort to continue that R&D investment as we move forward as part of Teledyne, but more on that later. It's important to note too, in our industry, that 20 of the top 50 R&D spenders are in the ICT industry, so it's clearly a very important part of investment in Canada for where the future of the country is purported to be moving into knowledge-based industries away from traditional manufacturing operations in the industries that cropped up since the turn of the century. Back to DALSA briefly, we have two main segments within our business, digital imaging and semiconductor. And on the digital imaging side, we provide high-performance imaging components, chips, cameras, image processing boards, software that provide solutions to a number of applications. And in our semiconductor business, two main strategic focuses. One is a leading supplier of MEMS, a technology for fabless semiconductor companies in general, and also as a key supplier for the CCD image sensor wafers that are used in the digital imaging part of our business. Within digital imaging, the main categories that we supply are shown there: machine vision, life sciences, human vision, space, defense. Generally, our products go into some other company's machine, and in the area of machine vision are used to inspect things that are manufactured. So, as I said, we're kind of a few steps down the chain in terms of the consumer applications. We probably inspected the TV screen that you watch or the smartphone that you use every day to ensure that the screen has all its pixels operating and meets all the requirements for performance from the manufacturer. But you probably didn't know that, and we don't have an opportunity to broadcast our contributions to that industry, so we really rely on our own business growth to raise our profile within the Canadian industrial landscape. One other comment there, we are a majority owner of Optech, which is a LiDAR company in Vaughan, and we've used that ownership position to also create new opportunities for the company, as you'll see in the coming slides. These are all different applications that we sell into for our imaging solutions. Essentially, on the manufacturing side, any manufactured good is likely to be inspected by our products, but beyond that, we provide imaging solutions for a number of different non-industrial applications, as you see there. On the semiconductor side, we are one of the top independent MEMS foundries. The largest foundries, ST, Sony, make a large number of their own products in their foundries. We are not a product company on our semiconductor side. We provide the capability to our customers to make high-performance MEMS devices for all types of applications, ranging from microphones and resonators for cell phones, accelerometers and gyros for game controllers. Automotive was one of our first successful applications. We've been selling into that market for probably 15 years for pressure sensors and flow detectors. And at the highest performance end of our capabilities is in optical network and multi-channel optical switches. One slide on Teledyne Technologies, our parent company. Teledyne is a US-based company. They focus on technology acquisitions. That's primarily been their mode of growth is by acquiring technology companies. DALSA was their largest acquisition and to date still remains as the largest company that they've acquired. We're also in the area that they really are focusing on expansion, which is that of commercial solutions. Teledyne was originally a defense and government contract based operation, and over the last 5 years they've focused much more heavily on expanding into commercial product solutions, and DALSA was the first large one in that category. So that's the background on our company and what we do and the types of products we provide, and a little bit of our history and how we sit now as a subsidiary of a large US company operating a fairly large division outside of our American parents' head office location. So how do we continue to grow, to keep doing what we've done, and what advice do we have and lessons learned that we can share with other companies in Canada? The first comment is understand what it means to operate your company in Canada. Don't look at it necessarily as a negative or a hindrance. Instead, look to those specific facets of running the company in Canada that can create the strengths. There are always countering challenges that we have as Canadian companies. We tend to be viewed as smaller players internationally. I know that, having sold most of our products outside of the country. So we have to balance those perceptions with the opportunities that we have in Canada. And the last point there, to beat off the threats, there are some threats that are showing up on the horizon right now, and it'll take some input and direction from all of us to help change those. So, you know, SWOT analysis is textbook MBA stuff. It's probably actually getting too old now. There's many more recent approaches to reviewing your company's growth plans, but in spite of the textbook approach, take a look at it from the point of view of a Canadian company, not just a technology company or not a company that is striving for growth through international competition, but specifically what it means to operate within Canada. So there is an opportunity to differentiate from US suppliers. There are certainly a lot of legislative and I would say kind of government restrictions as a US company. I actually didn't realize so many things existed that actually end up restricting commercial activity within the US until we became part of Teledyne. Now, admittedly, Teledyne's history as a defense and government contracting company means that their policies and their approaches to business in the US and outside the US are even more conservative, I'll say, than a commercial company would be operating in the US. But there's no doubt in my mind that we have a somewhat more flexible operating environment in Canada. And in particular, we're going to try and take advantage of some of those export restrictions that apply to US companies. We do have strong government support. As I mentioned in a few slides, we also have a few government blunders that slow us down, but we do generally have strong government support, and that generally is at all levels. Recognition that knowledge-based industries have a strong future for our country, and that we're moving more and more away from making tires and old manufactured goods and moving into products that whether they're manufactured here or not, or whether they're purely knowledge-based products, is really the future for the country. And my warning there is that it's very easy to take some of those opportunities and advantages and turn them into threats through some bad decisions at government levels, and hopefully we can exert the influence to prevent that from happening. Another advantage is that we're not too big. We have in this room, for example, a relatively small crowd, but a crowd that incorporates many of the key companies in the ICT industry. It's very difficult to do that in the US, for example, where the opportunity for intimacy and working together really doesn't exist. We need to take advantage of that, and not only through organizations like ITAC, but also within smaller communities, within cities, and even smaller groups within cities to learn who your neighbors are and figure out how to work together with them and create, you know, the 1 + 1 = 3 opportunity. So kind of recognize the fact that we are Canadian and that we are Canadian operating companies, and to do that, look at your business from the point of view of how you would operate if you were in other locations. Understand the restrictions that face your competitors, and sometimes they are significant. I'll give you an example in a moment. In general, I would say that the Canadian companies, both emerging and well-established, tend to be smaller and more nimble than their larger competitors that may exist in other locations. I've, again, seen many examples of this now that we've become part of Teledyne. Our employees used to think that DALSA was kind of slow and bureaucratic as we grew to 1,000 employees, but once we became part of Teledyne, they really appreciate how quick the decision-making actually happens within DALSA itself as compared to the process within a larger $2 or $3 billion US company. So take advantage of that and learn to do things quickly and beat your competitors in that respect. The picture at the very bottom there is a grouping of people in Eindhoven in the Netherlands, where our operation is located. A couple of weeks ago, the mayors from the Tri-City area, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, visited Europe, and for several years now have been, at the city level, governments have been working together to duplicate lessons learned and successes in collaboration of companies at the city level. And in Waterloo, the example is Communitech, the organization that helps tech companies work together to grow. And the mayors from Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge visited the Netherlands for several days to work to transfer some of that success to the same size communities in the Netherlands, and we were part of that group. A successful meeting, an example of how there is government support really at all levels that we can take advantage of. On a larger scale, I have the example shown here of the C2MI built in Bromont, Quebec, and opened in 2012. This is a huge project that was supported very strongly by the federal and the provincial government in Quebec to build a facility that was co-founded by us and IBM and the University of Sherbrooke. Really an excellent example of not only government support but also collaboration between industry and academia and government. The center has two different operating areas. One is 200 millimeter MEMS technology, which DALSA operates, and advanced microelectronic packaging, which IBM operates. And the two companies are responsible for the day-to-day operations and staffing of the center. The University of Sherbrooke is the owner and administrator of the center and provides a large influx of highly skilled students to help further the research that goes on within the center. For Teledyne DALSA, this C2MI represents what our future R&D will be in terms of where it's located, and also the skills that we have access to through the university. We're currently working on advanced infrared applications, and that project has, I don't know the exact count, but 15 to 20 PhD students and postdocs from the University of Sherbrooke, all working at the university and at the center to help us develop our infrared technology. And that kind of access and opportunity is really rare worldwide. And in fact, our new owners were so impressed with the opportunity there that they've put Canada as one of their top priorities for continued expansion and acquisition, just because of the benefits that we have in operating within this country. Other examples of collaboration. This is the Communitech chart that shows the companies that have popped up in Waterloo region over the last many years. Many spun off of the University of Waterloo, in part due to U of W's progressive intellectual property policy, which gives professors and inventors ownership to the technology. It doesn't stay with the university. And this really fuels entrepreneurial growth within the region. You can see the breakdown of companies in terms of where they're focusing. Clearly, software is the big focus and the big success area, and admittedly, the vast majority of these companies are very small. They're startup companies, but the law of averages will work, and many of these will grow in the next 10 to 20 years and become significant contributors to our technology industry, not just in the Waterloo region, but countrywide. So one of the things that we're doing is taking advantages of the collaboration and the access that we have within Canada to expand our own business. Our history and our growth came from visible imaging. We started doing postal sorting. We moved then into the ultraviolet region as our customers demanded sensitivity to lower wavelengths so they could inspect smaller lithographies in mask and wafer inspection. And over the last 5 years, we've been embarking on a strategy to move at either end of the spectrum into X-ray imaging for large panel medical, surgical applications, and most recently into uncooled infrared opportunities on the longer wavelength end of the spectrum. And the way we've been doing that is by taking advantage of opportunities that we have within Canada. On taking that infrared imaging example, on the technology side, we've combined access to infrared technology by licensing certain key parts, both from US companies who are allowed to export licenses to patents but aren't allowed to export proven implemented technology. We've used the expertise at the National Optics Institute in Quebec City to turn those licenses into implemented technology, and we've applied the capability we have within our MEMS fab to make it to make the technology bits into a real capability that has started to produce infrared imaging solutions. An infrared image sensor is not a new product or a new technology, but what is new is the growth in the market opportunities for uncooled infrared imaging. Already there is, you've seen advertisements for the use of infrared imagers as add-on modules to your iPhone to allow you to not only look at visible light imaging, but also to scan the parking lot at night before you venture out to your car to see if there's any bad guys lurking in the shadows using low-resolution infrared. So you wonder, how are we going to face the competition? Well, the difference here comes from the fact that we are a Canadian supplier. Most of the competition in uncooled infrared operates in the US. In fact, there's only one company outside the US who makes infrared imagers. All of the others are in the US. As the rest of world supplier, we expect to be able to get over the hurdles that our US competitors face, where they're not allowed to export any infrared detectors over a certain resolution or certain frame rate because of their military significance. We, on the other hand, can develop that technology and are free to import it back into the US, which is good because we can sell to our competitors. We can sell smaller components where they have access to the market already, and we can sell worldwide where they don't have access to that market, all because of the fact that we're a Canadian supplier and we've turned our weakness, our potential weakness as a small player into a real advantage in the worldwide market. So where are we threatened as Canadian suppliers? At this conference, not only this year, but in many past discussions, we've all heard of the lack of access to capital. It's important and it's significant, and it's part of or derives from the fact that we are smaller players and we don't have a critical mass. We have undervalued public technology companies. That leads to some foreign takeover realities. There's a long list of companies, and DALSA's on that list, who became targets for foreign takeovers because of the undervaluation. We have government procurement regulations which are somewhat self-defeating for technology products. I talked about our infrared initiatives, and we've worked hard to try and land development programs with the Canadian military, who's very excited to have access to higher performance infrared than they can currently receive. But for us to embark on a development contract with the Canadian military as a customer, we would have to go through the development process, create a new product, and then release the technology and the IP for that product to any and all competitors who may want to actually produce the product in the end, because the procurement regulations within Canada prevent the developer from having a monopoly on the sale of the end product. The only reason we do developments is to sell products in the end. So we end up being essentially unable to provide the military with world-leading infrared technology because we're not going to develop it and then have somebody else build the product on the back of our IP. So this is certainly a challenge for the Canadian government. We've heard of the changes in the SR&ED program where consistent, repeatable R&D funding, especially for large R&D spenders such as Teledyne DALSA, have been significantly reduced. And the reality is that is pushing R&D to other countries. The Netherlands has, in contrast, strongly enhanced its R&D support for technology companies with the patent box concept, which is being reviewed in Canada, but I'm sure is many decades away. And finally, all of the studies prove that we have insufficient ICT deployment, and that leads to lower productivity across the country. So our disappointing markets, it's a reality. I don't have a great solution, but knowing the threat is better than being surprised by it. We just don't have enough people and companies and investors willing to fund all the great ideas that we have in Canada. And this is a stark contrast to the US, and anyone who's gone through the pain and agony of trying to fund a startup can tell these stories much better than I. But once companies reach a critical mass and become public, they still remain undervalued, and in comparison to similar companies in the US, we always end up with significant valuation challenges as a public company. And this can often lead to the rug being pulled out from under your feet, and I've experienced it myself as part of DALSA, where our company had great opportunities and great growth potential, but simply couldn't get the traction in the public markets, and our value was much more highly recognized outside the country, and essentially we moved from being a Canadian company to a US subsidiary. And that's been a reality over the last 10 years for dozens of Canadian public tech companies. Another challenge is the fact that I think our government needs to recognize more seriously the importance of R&D dollars. There are a large number of fair-sized ICT companies in Canada, and they are a significant driver for the economic engine in our country. In fact, one of the interesting stats I read recently was that ICT in Canada drives a greater GDP number than mining and forestry combined, which are always considered to be key industries within Canada. The list of those top companies is also the list that spend most on R&D, and the reality is that one can spend money on R&D more efficiently if there's tax benefits to do so. We are currently within Teledyne DALSA going through our budget planning for 2014, and our parent is putting pressure on one area within the company, and that's R&D spending. And the impact of the recent SR&ED tax support has had a direct impact on our ability to spend R&D dollars and to employ highly qualified personnel to carry out that R&D. The key thing about the SR&ED funding for us was that it provided repeatable and quantifiable plannable R&D spending support. We knew the program, we knew where we could spend R&D to get the support. Moving to project-based initiatives, taking those R&D dollars out of SR&ED and putting them into single project items removes that ability for us to plan. We can't depend upon receiving a particular program award in the third quarter of next year, whereas with SR&ED, we knew that we would receive X percentage of our R&D funding in tax credits. And with that reduction, we've also been forced to make a reduction in our R&D staff, unfortunately. It's a direct impact, and it's one that I don't think the government has come to realize. So where's our future? I think there is a lot of opportunity within the country. You saw just in the Waterloo region how much innovation is happening in terms of new companies forming and new ideas moving to commercialization. Hopefully we can get some corrections in our government's approach to the direct and indirect support for R&D activity. Collaboration is pretty important. It's the only way that we can move that impediment of being a group of smaller companies into an advantage by being confident enough to work with another company and not be worried about competitive disadvantage. Also, you may have opportunities within your company itself that you may not be aware of if you're part of a larger organization, and that's certainly what I've found as being part of Teledyne. Specifically, a few key points there. The SR&ED program at least stopped the changes. Reversing them would be difficult, if not impossible, but at least stop the changes and the reduction. Work to fix that procurement system. Work to expand the policy, the IP policies that have worked at the University of Waterloo to other universities, so that we can duplicate that entrepreneurial environment that exists in our region to other parts of the country. Collaborating, we've found a real opportunity by taking our visible imaging, adding it to the LiDAR capability of OpTech that I mentioned earlier, and also combining that with some of the businesses that Teledyne has around the world and some of their other companies shown on the screen there. These are not markets that we had even considered before, but when given the opportunity to collaborate with different parts of Teledyne and even recent acquisitions from DALSA, we really created some new business for ourselves that really multiplied the opportunities, because now we're selling visible imaging products to LiDAR customers that we didn't even know about or from a market point of view even knew existed. So look for that and take advantage of that as well. And all of these things can come together and lead to opportunity for ICT companies in Canada. We also face challenges. 2-man to 2,000-man companies will will have an opportunity to flourish. You got to take advantage of the situation of being a Canadian company. I try and identify where those exist for you and turn them into factors for your own company's success. The fact that in Waterloo, at least, I run into the president of companies in related industries in the local Home Depot when I'm there on Saturday morning is a real advantage. It's not something that's likely to happen in a US-based company, but the fact that I know these guys and I run into them on a regular basis and the community is small enough to make it work, take advantage of that. Going back to my comment that we've got a large group of important decision makers in Canada's ICT industry in one room here, we should be taking maximum advantage of that. And finally, try to explain to your own government representatives the hurdles that you face, because it's our voices that are going to drive change, and don't be afraid to talk about it. And all these things will lead to some success. So that's my talk, and thank you for your attention.